Thanks, Carlos. And I think one of the other aspects that is really important to consider as we go through this discussion is the current unprecedented state with coronavirus and COVID-19 has really put everything around this entire healthcare discussion in a bit of a reactive mode, right? The technologies that we're talking about and the agencies and the governments that we're talking about have all been around for a long time. These discussions about digital identities and data privacy and personal information has all been around, but the current state has put us in a reactive mode as we all realize there will be a new normal, and that new normal will incorporate a new way of healthcare. And I think it's important for those of us that are trying to lead these activities to realize that reactive mode is there and try and turn that into a proactive solution creation. And as we do that, we also have to realize that in reactive times, unfortunately, the bad guys also come out and try and profit from the situation. And so for me, it's really about how do we not only start to integrate and provide those solutions, but also how do we ensure the integrity of those solutions and those solution providers. So specifically, Carlos, you talked about kind of operationalizing it. And I think, you know, the idea of digital identity is going to be paramount to how this gets operationalized. I think you'll see it operationalized first from the healthcare provider perspective, most likely, and the ability for those healthcare providers to track their information. I think it will be leveraging distributed ledger technology and blockchain as a way to protect the data and the privacy of the information, because that will empower a healthcare worker to be able to share their credentials, let's say, whether that's their test results or their certifications, et cetera, without really exposing the true information, the private information. And I think that's going to be a very key piece to the solution. I think that will have to eventually expand beyond the healthcare providers into the normal world and into digital identities for people. And I think the other aspect of this that we haven't really touched on is, you know, there are a lot of other components to healthcare that have to be protected and have to have an identity in order for the holistic view of health and well-being to be secure. And that's everything from, you know, the medical devices and authenticity to pharmaceuticals and authenticity to usability. So you ask about the consumer impact, and today you've seen a huge movement towards telemedicine, but as you've heard many panelists say, you know, there's still a large percentage of the world that doesn't have internet connection. That telemedicine may turn into just a phone call, for example. How do I, on the other end of that telemedicine diagnosis, feel confident that the pharmaceutical I'm being prescribed is real, right? Illicit trade and counterfeit pharmaceuticals are a mass problem in the world, and being able to protect that in a similar way, I think, is very important. And it also provides the ability in this more virtual world in particular for a consumer potentially to interact with that pharmaceutical. I may typically talk to my pharmacist when I pick up something, or talk to my physician when I'm being prescribed something. I may not have those opportunities, but if that pharmaceutical has a digital identity and a way for me to interact with it, I can still get that information, as well as close the loop from a digital perspective from my healthcare provider to whatever I'm being prescribed or given back to the secure chain. So you've heard lots about track and trace and these kinds of things. For me, it's about how do we get proactive and how do we not just solve these problems for the current state we're in, but rather how do we solve the current state we're in while solving the future problems as well? And that digital identity across people and things as it relates to health and well-being, I think, is the critical point.